Good afternoon. This is Michael Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates. I haven't done one of these videos where I talk. I've been doing kind of the shorter 2-minute versions where you just get some rolling graphics and some music, and those seem to be pretty popular. But I wanted to explain some things coming in the upcoming pattern. I'm going to start off with the 7-day forecast today because that's kind of the short term that you've been getting. So I'll cover that first, and then I'll move into kind of what's possibly on the horizon in the mid to long range. So again, we started off the first 4 days of January. Both the high and the low have been warmer than the average high. That's going to end effective in the morning, as we'll finally have low temperatures that'll still be warmer than average, but they will at least not be warmer than the average high. As if you've ever noticed in the bottom left-hand side of the graphics, I put the average high and low temperature for the beginning of the period. In this case, January is pretty flat, so the average high of 35, average low of 22. That actually will pretty much cover this entire period. You can see the highs and lows are still above average, especially the lows. So, but we will at least feel somewhat closer to normal instead of 60s like we had yesterday. So we got a little disturbance that's going to come through tomorrow. That will bring a chance for some snow showers and maybe a little bit of rainfall that mixes into it. We'll just have to see how it plays out. But at this point, I don't really expect any kind of impacts from the snow tomorrow. If it manages to accumulate at all, it will probably only be on the grassy areas and elevated surfaces. And even then, it's going to have to snow pretty hard to do it. So I don't expect it, but I put 0 to an inch on there just in case, something wacky happens. But odds are we're just going to see some snowflakes falling and maybe a little bit of whitening on some, again, grassy and elevated surfaces that have the capability of cooling faster. We look on down the forecast here, Friday, Saturday. Saturday is our next real disturbance that we'll be watching. I've had a chance of snowfall in there, but as I got to looking back, because some data shows it and some data doesn't, I got to looking back at the Bering Sea, what was going on there back around December 19th, December 20th, and the way things progressed through at that time, because we're on about a 19-day lag between there and the central U.S., it really wasn't supportive of snowfall coming through here. It was more supportive of the low tracking right across us, like some of the data has. So I've adjusted the forecast accordingly. That high temperature of 36 on Saturday, also very dependent on the track of the low. If it tracks a little north of us, we'll get up closer to 40. If it tracks across us or just slightly south, then we'll be in the mid 30s. So just know we could be anywhere from 36 to 40 or so on Saturday. Looks like just a rain snow mix at this point with any accumulation staying well north. If that changes, I'll let you know. Sunday, we really shouldn't see a lot in the way of precipitation, but we could see some, and it'd be intermittent. And again, it could be a mix of, it probably would mostly be liquid, maybe a little bit of snow or sleet mixing in. But again, not much expected Sunday. And then, as you can see, we'll be in the 40s to start the week. Then we'll have a little bit of a front kind of sneak in on us Wednesday. Beyond that, there's a little bit of question on what happens to end next week with that system I've been watching around. I've had the 12th, the 15th time frame. It's looking around the 13th or 14th. I'll address that with you here in just a little bit on what we expect with that. Here's a big reason why we've been so warm, and that's it. We've got this jet stream at the 250 millibar level just screaming across the Pacific Ocean in almost a straight line from Asia over to the United States. And as that does that, any air that gets spun down from the north gets modified as it comes across there. So it brings mild air into the continental United States. And then on top of that, then we see that once it's getting close to California, it's buckling off down here to the southwest. You can see it takes a southwest dip and then turns back up into the continental United States. So that just allows it to modify even more, leading to these warmer temperatures. That's kind of why we've been so warm to this point. And there's maybe some signs that that might retract some, but as long as that continues to scream across, we're really going to have a hard time getting much in the way of cold air. If this had buckled north on up into Canada and then dropped into the United States from the northwest, it would be a different story. But that's not what we've got going on right now. Right now, the wave breaks are happening toward the south instead of toward the north. I want to talk also about the importance of the polar vortex because there's a lot being made of the fact that polar vortex is not on this side of the planet right now. That does help us considerably in getting colder air in and giving us some higher ratio snows. However, it does not have to be here. We do not need access to Arctic air. We just need access to colder Canadian air to have snowfall. And I was looking back, I don't know why this particular month clicked in my head, but it did. I was looking back at the end of December of 2012. That month started off, there was no snow until like the 20th or so. But from the 26th to the 31st, we picked up 19 inches of snow in 6 days. And if you look over here, our highs were mostly in the 30s. Our lows were mostly in the 20s. It wasn't excessively cold. It was relatively average, really, and just slightly cooler. And we still picked up a ton of snow with that setup. So, yes, access to polar air does help. It's more beneficial to getting bigger snows, but it's not mandatory. We just need things to set up to where we can draw down some colder Canadian air because they've got a decent snowpack up there. So it's, if we can get access to some of that, then we can pick up some snow. That's a big if, but I just wanted to show you that it's not absolutely mandatory to have the polar vortex over here and or to have access to the Arctic circulation. All right, the system next weekend. Here's a look at the GFS 500 millibars, and the other models are pretty similar. And what we see briefly, and this is just briefly, it comes with this storm is we've got this strong ridge out here to the west, kind of hanging out over the western U.S. Then we've got this low pressure system, upper level low, kind of dropping into the Ohio Valley. That'll swing through and off to the east. And as it's coming through, because this ridge out here to the west is so strong, we're going to have access to a strong northwest flow. That could bring down some colder air from Canada. So if we're going to get a decent snow, it could happen next week, next weekend around the 13th to 15th. But it's going to be timing, timing, timing. That's always the way it is for us. Things always seem to have to time out perfectly for us to get much here in Indiana. So we'll see how that develops, but the setup is there. It's just a matter of, does it set up like this? Is that ridge out west less amplified? That flow from the northwest less amplified where we're picking up the Pacific air and, without it being modified over some snowy areas to cool it down? That's all big ifs on how that plays out. The Bering Sea points to this having a decent chance to produce for us. The track of the low that the GFS has is about right. It's just a matter of, do we get the access to the cold air? We'll just have to see how it plays out over the next few days. Here's a look, as I'm always looking at the Bering Sea. Here's a look at what's going on over the Pacific right now. And of course, we can see this strong flow straight across. And then up here in the Aleutian Islands, there's a pretty decent circulation. Again, we're on about a 19-day lag, so we're on the 4th. You'd be looking somewhere around the 23rd, 24th, and for this to possibly um, bring some bearing on what we do here in the Great Lakes area. And there's a decent low pressure up there that looks to swing just to the south of the Aleutians in a position where that could be a favorable track if it translates over here. I actually pointed to the wrong thing. This is really small on what I'm working with. I'm actually looking back out over here. Sorry about that. But the point being that we'll see how that tracks over the next couple of days. That would maybe give us an indication of how things might play out here toward the end of January. There is another system I don't have an image for, but there is another system around somewhere around the maybe 18th or 19th time frame that could produce for us. Also, again, it's all, can we get access to cold air? If not, it's just cold rain. And I'll show you those here in just a moment. Here's a loop of the CFS model. I don't normally use it, but it does kind of agree with its progression that it has. This is at the 850 millibar level with temperatures. You can see it progressing. Here's around the 13th or so. There goes that low tracking off to the east. And then if we wait it out, and then here we get around the 17th or so, there comes yet another storm system tracking up through here. And then we get on out, and you can see it's got a decent plunge of cold air. The Bering Sea would bear that out. And then as we get then later into the month, around the it kind of glosses over the 24th. You can see the cold air come in. Then toward the end, yet another stronger system that would track across this area and pump in more cold air and potentially some maybe some snow chances late month. We'll just have to wait and see how that all pans out, but that's kind of the way that looks right now. And I kind of agree with it. It at least fits the pattern. We can't be specific, but it at least fits the pattern right now. Could all that stuff be a little farther north? Yes, it could. If the tropics don't have, if the MJO doesn't play ball with us, and that could move all this stuff to the north, really to the northwest. Here's just a shorter view of that same loop. This is shortened down to just the 18th to 20th time frame. And again, we can see that big spin of low. I mean, that's very similar to the storm that we had right there before Christmas, where the track is really kind of strong from the south to the northeast. But again, we also know when you get those, you can get some major snows and some major storms, but you can also get some major busts and just end up with a big wind maker with a little bit of snow. So again, that's all a long way out, but we'll see how it plays out. This again is January 18th to 20th. I think the CFS is a little slow, so I would maybe speed this up a day or two, but it's a good visual anyway. Sticking with the CFS, then this would be the one toward the end of the month, around the 29th and 30th. And again, we can see a strong low tracking kind of right there just along the Ohio River, pumping in cold air behind it. Again, the pattern is supportive of it. We'll see if something turns up in the Bering Sea here, in a few days to back this up. And, I think the pattern is supportive of this. It's just a matter of, does it actually happen, or is this a little farther north because the tropics aren't playing ball? I have no way to know just yet. We'll kind of have to wait it out and see. But overall, kind of what I expect. We've started off the month very warm. I expect us to continue warmer than average, at least through next weekend or so. The afternoon European was showing pretty big cold shot next week, the end of next week. We'll see if that actually pans out or not. But that would come with that storm system. So yeah, after we reach that storm system around the 13th or 14th, we may cool down to average to slightly cooler. And what it's going to be is maybe a cold shot followed quickly by a warm, return to warmth. then another storm comes, brings cold shot, and then we return to warmth. It'll be that kind of a yo-yo is what it looks like to me. Our best snow chances, again, next weekend, kind of a day or two either side of the 14th, a day or two either side of the 22nd, a day or two either side of the 27th. Again, I think the CFS was a little slow on those, and I think it kind of ignored the potential system around the 23rd, 22nd, somewhere in that time frame. So I went ahead and stuck it in there. Those are the main things I'm watching. And again, I'll maintain a healthy level of skepticism because December should have played out well for us, and it didn't as far as snow. It was colder than average once we got into the second half, but that was largely fueled by the massive dump of Arctic air. So as a whole, December didn't really play out well for us. So I'll remain skeptical on anything going forward, but some snow and some cold is on the table as we close out this month. I don't see any Arctic outbreaks on the horizon. If we're going to have another one, it's probably not going to happen until late January or early February. And again, we're going to need some help from the polar vortex for that to happen. There's some model indications that we could end up with the polar vortex back on this side, but that's a long way out. So we'll just have to wait and see how that all plays out. And I've droned on long enough. So with all that said, thank you to those of you who've supported this page financially. Thank you to all of you for clicking on the Facebook product. It's helping earn some money, although I'm having trouble getting it from them because they're giving me some tax issues, but hopefully that'll get ironed out. At any rate, thank you all who do support this page in one way or another financially. If you can do monthly directly, that is super helpful. If you can't, then keep clicking on our on my forecasts and images, everything I share. Comment on it, click on it, like it. Even if you do emojis in the comments, just continue to do it and do it on the Madison County Weather Updates page. That's the only way Facebook will compensate on that. You can see the other methods by which you can donate and support the page and help keep it going. I will have a couple of new sponsors coming on, and so that's exciting. And as soon as they get me their logos and everything, I'll get that on there as well. So with all that said, this is Micah Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates. Thank you very much and have a great day.